Today may be the biggest test yet for former President Trump's influence in the Republican Party. Voters in 5 states head to the polls to pick party nominees for the midterm election. The NewsHour's Nicole Ellis is here with me to walk through what we are watching. Nicole, welcome. Let's start with this runoff election that is happening in Texas. It is, coincidentally, a district right next to where this terrible shooting has just occurred. Obviously, this happened well after polls had been open for quite a while today. You've been reporting on that. What can you tell us about that particular race?
That's right, William. In Texas, all eyes are on the Democrats' runoff in the 28th Congressional District, where incumbent Henry Cuellar is in a rematch with immigration attorney Jessica Cisneros. Now, Cuellar has held that seat since 2004, but Cisneros lost to him in 2020, and this time around managed to close the gap on those votes just enough to force a runoff. Now, this is a very important race for a multitude of reasons, but primarily because it's a benchmark for what the Democratic Party may look like in the future, and this tug of war between progressive and moderate views. For example, Cuellar used to be was the last A-rated, was the last person Democrat in the House that had an A rating from the NRA. It's now since been downgraded to a C. Cisneros has been outspoken and vocal about her support of gun legislation. This race has also gotten added attention because of the leaked opinion about Roe v. Wade, speaking to a potential overturning of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court. Cuellar Cuellar is the most conservative anti-abortion rights Democrat in the House. Cisneros, on the other hand, has been outspoken about her support of abortion rights and is supported by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Bernie Sanders, while Cuellar has the support of leadership in the House on the Democrat side. And this speaks to a sort of refrain that we've seen ongoing between progressive and moderate ideals, and what that will mean for the party as they strategically think about where they'll be and how they will place themselves in order to ensure and secure their very narrow majority in the House in November.
The other big marquee matchup is in Georgia. I just got back from there recently, and that's where President Donald Trump has very overtly been putting his finger on the scale, trying to influence the outcome. Tell us what you've been watching there.
That's right. In Georgia, all eyes are on the GOP primaries. And that's because Georgia became the epicenter of election fraud allegations and Trump's lie that the election was stolen from him in 2020. At the time, the elected Republican officials in office all spoke out publicly and made it clear that Trump lost in a fair and free election. 2 years later, in 2022, it's become a referendum on that 2020 election. Trump has endorsed a litany of candidates down the ballot statewide in Georgia. Incumbent Governor Brian Kemp is up against former Senator David Perdue, who has been endorsed by Trump. Kemp actually campaigned with former Vice President Mike Pence last night and is leading the polls by a pretty sizable margin. Kemp, despite being the specter of Trump's ire throughout this journey and this campaign, is popular among GOP voters, in large part because he has enacted a lot of conservative laws, and specifically a voting rights law that Republicans say will ensure the integrity of the election, while Democrats say it restricts access to polls, specifically for voters of color. Now, ultimately, whoever wins the race will be up against Stacey Abrams, who hopes for a rematch and in large part is credited for bringing lots of voters of color to the polls.
With regards to that state elections law, I know there's also a very closely watched Secretary of State race for the person who might control elections going forward in Georgia. Tell us a little bit about that race.
That's right. That is the person who was in charge of those races was Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who is defending his role as the Republican candidate there against Jody Hice. Now, most people know Raffensperger because of his conversation with Trump, where Trump told him, find the votes that didn't exist in an effort to overturn the election.
Nicole Ellis, always great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.